After his costly victory at Asculum in 279 BC, King Pyrrhus of Epirus returned to Tarentum, battered but not broken. His army was exhausted and he needed time to rebuild. Yet fate offered no rest. Two paths lay before him: Macedon, calling for his sword against a Gallic invasion, or Sicily, where Greek cities begged for help against Carthage. To the surprise of his allies, Pyrrhus chose Sicily. He saw more than war. He saw empire. A chance to forge a Greek dominion in the west, a legacy rivaling Alexander himself. In late 278 BC, he crossed the sea with 8,000 infantry and 2,000 cavalry, slipping past the Carthaginian blockade. At first, success followed him. Cities like Tauromenium and Syracuse hailed him as a liberator. His fleet grew. Hope flared. But victory bred resentment. Heavy taxes and forced conscription turned allies into enemies. The people who once welcomed him now watched with cold eyes. By 276 BC, rebellion stirred across the island, and with Tarentum under Roman siege, Pyrrhus abandoned Sicily, his dream in ruins, his promise unfulfilled. When he returned to Italy in the spring of 275 BC, the situation was grim. His treasury was empty, his reputation tarnished. The Greek and Samnite allies, who had once fought beside him, were weary of his absence and his harsh rule. Meanwhile, Rome had recovered, reclaiming its lost ground and reasserting control over southern Italy. The tribes that once saw Pyrrhus as their champion now hesitated. Many viewed him as a spent force, a king whose fortunes had turned. Still, Pyrrhus refused to yield. He gathered what remained of his veterans, men who had followed him through every trial, and filled the gaps in his ranks with Tarentine militia, brave but untested. They lacked the discipline of his Macedonian phalanx, but Pyrrhus pressed on, clinging to the hope that one final victory could restore his name and his dream of a Greek dominion in the west. To break the Roman grip on southern Italy, Pyrrhus set out to defeat their consular armies one at a time. His plan was simple in theory, but bold in execution. He would send a small detachment to delay one Roman force in Lucania, while he marched north with 35,000 of his best troops toward Beneventum, where Consul Manius Curius Dentatus commanded the main Roman army. The Romans had taken position on high ground near the city, a strong defensive line that Pyrrhus knew would be costly to assault head-on. Instead, he chose to gamble. Drawing inspiration from the Spartans at Thermopylae, he planned a daring night maneuver. A quarter of his finest soldiers, along with his remaining war elephants, would circle through the hills to strike the Romans from behind. Once they attacked, the rest of his army would move in for the killing blow. But the plan began to unravel almost immediately. Under the cover of darkness, the flanking force set out, guided by Samnite scouts who still harbored resentment toward Pyrrhus for abandoning their cause in Sicily. Whether by malice or misdirection, the guides led the troops deep into the tangled forests of the Apennines. Confusion spread. Torches flickered out. Units lost contact with each other. When dawn broke, the element of surprise, Pyrrhus's greatest advantage, was gone. The Romans were ready. Consul Dentatus, expecting a night assault, had his men prepared at first light. As Pyrrhus's troops emerged from the forest, scattered and weary, Roman skirmishers, the velites, rushed forward. They unleashed volleys of javelins into the disordered phalanx, breaking its rhythm before it could even form up. The rocky terrain, which Pyrrhus had hoped to use to his advantage, turned against him. The tightly packed phalanx faltered on uneven ground, its cohesion crumbling under the Roman barrage. Desperate to regain control, Pyrrhus ordered his war elephants to charge the Roman flanks. But the Romans had learned from past encounters. The principes on the wings raised their heavy pila and hurled them at the beasts. The weighted spears pierced thick hides and armor alike. The elephants panicked. Trumpeting wildly, they turned and crashed through Pyrrhus's own lines, trampling soldiers and spreading chaos where order was already collapsing. Seeing the battle slipping away on the heights, Pyrrhus spurred his horse forward, leading a few hundred of his elite guards in a desperate charge down the hill. He tried to rally the shattered ranks and then positioned himself with the cavalry on the right flank, determined to make one final stand. But the Romans pressed their advantage. Turning from Pyrrhus' broken flanking force, the legions advanced downhill with relentless force, crashing into the main body of the phalanx. The impact was devastating. The Pyrrhic left began to waver, then broke entirely, followed soon after by the right. Refusing to concede, Pyrrhus committed his last remaining war elephants in a final attempt to halt the Roman advance. Yet once again, the Romans met them with disciplined volleys of pila. The beasts, struck and terrified, scattered in panic through their own lines. At that point, the battle could not be saved. Exhausted and outmatched, Pyrrhus's soldiers began to fall back in disorder. Seeing no other choice, the king ordered an orderly retreat, hoping at least to preserve the remnants of his army from total destruction. His army was not annihilated, but it was broken, scattered across the hills, its spirit spent. The Romans stood victorious on the field of Beneventum, and Pyrrhus' dream of mastering Italy was over. The defeat at Beneventum ended Pyrrhus' ambitions in the west. His army was broken, his treasury exhausted, and his dream of a Greek empire in Italy and Sicily all but extinguished. Former allies turned away, Samnites in bitterness, Greek cities in disillusionment, no longer seeing a liberator, but a failed king. His once feared phalanx lay shattered, and his reputation, forged in victories over Rome, was gone. Though still a king in name, Pyrrhus knew the struggle was over. Isolated and weakened, he withdrew to Tarentum, leaving only a token garrison as Roman power swept through southern Italy. In the spring of 275 BC, Pyrrhus sailed back to Epirus with barely 8,000 infantry and 500 cavalry, far from the conqueror who had crossed the sea years before. His kingdom endured, but his legacy was sealed. A brilliant commander remembered not for the empire he built, but for victories that cost him everything.